getting this information out there. What has been the response by and large? What have you guys heard? Any particular stories? I know for sure, like you mentioned, your social media following, your at least the Facebook page has double the amount of people that it had when we first talked in December or January, early this year, last year. So that's already been exploding. But can you tell us some of the standout things about what the response has been with the movie coming out?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, it's been incredible. We've really heard a lot of stories of like individual families that have been impacted, and it's helped them, or it's helped their child, or helped a family member. And so it's really been a cool like grassroots movement in that somebody will watch it and then they'll share it with 15 other people. So we don't have like we don't have a budget at all really to market this. So it's been really cool to see that. But I think really what we weren't expecting, and of course, our call to action at the end, if you've watched our documentary, is to share your story, to use your scope of influence, and then to obviously like write your legislators, because we knew logistically it was not going to happen without legislative change. And I mean, you as a consumer, you do have a lot of power to persuade companies to not use synthetic dyes if you write them, or if you stop buying their product. That's a powerful tool, but it's not going to work for everything. And even in speaking to school systems and people in poverty, when you look at that, it really needs to be legislative, because there's a whole group of people that's never going to hear this information. And I do think it's going to eventually get out there, but our call to action at the end was to write your legislators, and we were really shocked. And not all of this is because of us. Of course, we just had a small part in this. But when our documentary came out, the day after, and this is a testament really to God's timing, the day after our film came out, they banned Red 3 nationwide. And so that was powerful, because that's obviously like a massive part of our documentary, is talking about Red 3 and how we've known that it's cancer causing since 1990. And so 35 years later, they finally addressed it because of so much public pressure. But really, I think some of the coolest aspects has been like seeing how this has impacted us at a state level. Because, organizations like CSBI have petitioned the FDA to relook at synthetic dyes and to address this issue for decades. And lawfully, they're supposed to like if you file a formal complaint or a request, like they're
Petition.
supposed to respond to the petition within 40 days. And like the FDA is literally just not doing what they're supposed to do. They're not responding. And so they're just basically ignoring every law that they're supposed to be abiding by at this point, at least. And so you have to go at it from a state level, because what's going to happen is if you have a state like California, and this is what happened with Red 3, California banned Red 3 and banned synthetic dyes in public schools, which California has so much control because they have such a big pull economically. And so then we started addressing things at a national level, because it becomes an issue of, okay, well, are we going to make products for California and not for the rest of the country? And so we knew that we had to make it inconvenient for manufacturers and for the US government to force their hand to address it. And so I think one of the most powerful things to me that's come out of our documentary, well, two. One is we went back to Utah to do a screening with Cara Lynn from Just Ingredients. She's in our documentary, and she's an incredible, influence in the health space. And so we did a screening at what's it called? Thanksgiving Point in Utah. It was just really cool. And so after that screening, we had a lobbyist come up to us, and she's a mom, and she said, you've reignited my passion for this. I'm going to really pursue this. I'm going to talk to a legislator, and we're going to get this banned in Utah public schools. I was like, let's do it. I gave her my email address, and we like tackled it, and she got a legislator. And this past session, they banned dyes in public schools in Utah. And so the same thing happened in West Virginia. There was a girl that had been following us for a long time, and we connected. And she's a lobbyist, and her
State
husband's
senator.
actually a state senator. And so she had told us that she wanted to work on this issue. Well, our documentary came out and she wrote me and she was like, we're going to do it. We're actually going to do it. And I was like, okay, whatever I can do to help. And I connected her with EWG and CSBI. And whenever they introduced the bill, I was like, we have to have experts, because the reality is if they don't know the facts, they're not going to vote in favor of this legislation. So we worked really carefully to kind of cater, obviously to make sure that we had the people that we needed, a good mix of like the story and the science, and people that were going to be respected. And, they ended up banning dyes in the entire state of West Virginia. And if you know anything about West Virginia, one, it's a very, very mega majority Republican state. So it's a stark difference from a California, which it's kind of expected for them to ban a chemical like this. So it has shifted from a very, very liberal issue to, okay, this is a bipartisan issue. It passed almost unanimously. There was actually a Democrat that stood up and he said, he's always been in the minority in West Virginia. And he said, this is the kind of legislation that we need to be passing. Like, everyone cares about children. And so just to see it shift from when we've started the film, a very liberal issue to this is a human issue has been really super powerful. And of course, that's not just us, it's been like God's timing and us having a small part in it. But to see the power of, just regular everyday people to make change. Like, these were just moms. And then in West Virginia, she was a mom that's a lobbyist, and she got her husband to watch the documentary, and look what happened. And so it's been really cool to see all the moving parts and to see how it actually can actually have, you know, long-term change. And then fast forward, we were invited to the HHS meeting where Kennedy and all the people were addressing synthetic dyes. And they even he got up there and he said, if it weren't for states like Utah and West Virginia, and he named a few others, then we wouldn't be here addressing synthetic dyes. And so, like, that was so powerful to see how, all these people came together and every single person did their own part, and it actually made change. And so it's been really cool. It's great to live in a country where, where people can actually make real change.
That's amazing. Wow. Whitney, I also have to tell you, your pronunciation of Thanksgiving Point was spot on. You said it just like a local. Congratulations. Good job. You absolutely nailed it.
Oh,
Good,
that's
good
great to hear.
pronunciation there. Yeah, great job. No, that's amazing to think that, either directly, indirectly, how much impact that's had. And again, these conversations are being had, the awareness is getting out there. For the person who wants to start down this journey, they're becoming aware of this and want to get it out. Are we talking like, do people have to kind of reinvent their entire lives to be able to get around this, or are there just a few simple changes that most people can make that will make a real dent in this issue?
I would say really realistically, it depends on what your lifestyle is like. For us, it really wasn't a massive shift. It was really more of a shift in reading labels was the hardest shift. And so, if you're used to consuming, the sugary foods and the bright colored sports drinks, you're really just going to have to shift to a different product that is similar that you or your children enjoy. Where I think it gets tricky is children in public school or children in school at all. And so, realistically, it depends on your school. Some schools literally require an allergy note from a doctor before they will even allow accommodations or allow you to bring food into the school. And so where that becomes sticky is this is not an actual allergic reaction for most people. It's a neurologic reaction. And so we do have to, make shifts in that. But realistically, if your school allows you to bring swaps, just bringing swaps to the school, bringing swaps for parties, and then if you are attending a birthday party, bringing a swap for your child is really one of the most realistic things that you can do. But it's very manageable. You can do it on a budget. There are stores like Aldi, Trader Joe's, and Whole Foods that have options that are relatively affordable depending on what you're getting. But where it gets really tricky is if you have like a medication, like a prescription medication. And so if your child or yourself is on a life-saving drug, like if you have epilepsy, for example, a lot of the medications are brightly colored, and to get it compounded, it costs thousands and thousands of dollars. And so that's where it gets tricky, and that's another legislative issue I think we're going to have to conquer, because you know pharmaceutical companies don't have the same level of they're not as affected by consumer demand because they have a patent on the recipes. So you either buy it or you don't buy it. There's no competition, so they can do what they want to do. And so that's a big issue. But overall, say you don't have those issues, it really is just a matter of shifting from or shifting from not reading labels to just being conscious of what's in your food. And then I really think that that will allow you to consume more whole foods and to be more aware of what you're putting in your body to begin with. And so the more whole foods we can consume, the better. And then the less ingredients you have on the label, obviously, the better.
We
Love it.
and you can do it in two different ways. We can tell people, we've told people, or we've seen some people do it like us, where they just like dropped everything. Like we went through our house, we took out everything that had dyes in it, and we got rid of it. Some people they phase out stuff, so they use up what they have. Where we're not saying that you have to throw away food. We understand that a lot of times that's food costs money, and you can't just throw away money a lot of times. So you can phase them out. Like Whitney said, we have a lot of resources on our website. If you go to todieforthedocumentary.com/resources, we have a 30-day elimination like diet process, like a 30-day process of getting rid of dyes, kind of teaching you how to read labels. We've got all kinds of resources to different like Whitney calls them swaps, basically like a one for one. If you really like Pop Tarts, well, here's a type of a top Pop Tart product you can get that doesn't have synthetic dyes. So we have a lot of things like that list and things like that. So there's a lot of resources on our website that will help. And you can't really do it wrong. If you're trying to improve your lifestyle, you're doing it right. So